This section covers the common husbandry practices that equine caregivers must be familiar with. This includes turnout times, behavior and handling, training, identification, castration, tail alterations, hoof care, and grooming. This is one of the longer sections of the code, so let's get started. Welcome to Section 6 of the Code of Practice for Equine. We are going to begin this section with turnout time, which in the context of the code means allowing horses some free time in a dry lot, arena, pen, or pasture, and is not to be confused with grazing. Turnout time is intended to provide horses with the opportunity to exercise and have social interactions. Exercise refers to physical activity, either indoors or outdoors, and can include walking in hand, riding, lunging, and hand grazing. Social opportunities are occasions when horses can interact with other horses. This includes having other horses within their sight, the ability to hear other horses, and/or direct contact with other horses. Research has shown that there are several advantages to providing horses with turnout and social opportunities. Horses with turnout time have greater bone density than those that are strictly stalled. And increased turnout and social opportunities have also shown themselves easier to train and handle. If given ample social opportunities where they are either turned out with other horses or housed as a group, horses learn training tasks more efficiently and perform fewer undesirable behaviors such as biting, kicking, or bucking in comparison to stalled horses. For these reasons, the code requires that all horses must have some form of exercise or turnout, unless under stall rest for medical reasons or severe environmental conditions make this temporarily impossible. This is very important to their physical and mental health and their development. Horses are highly adaptable to many weather conditions, and keeping them outdoors or giving them frequent outdoor access is encouraged. The code recommends that horses be out with other horses or other equine companions whenever possible. They should be provided daily exercise or turnout opportunities, ideally outdoors and with foraging opportunities. When building or renovating facilities, the design should allow for ample social opportunities, such as group housing or stall design that will allow horses to have visual or tactile contact with other equines. If this is not possible, stall-bound horses should be provided with continuous access to enrichment devices such as trickle feeders, nibble nets, or horse toys. For a small percentage of horses, turnout may bring a risk of injury, dependent on their temperament and whether they are accustomed to turnout. These horses may need to be transitioned to turnout over a period of time, such as transition from a stall to a small paddock and then to pasture. Turnout time helps to maintain the mental health of a horse and can aid in preventing stereotypy. A stereotypy, also referred to as a vice, is an abnormal behavior that serves no apparent function and is performed in a repetitive, invariant way. Let's review a few of the more common examples of stereotypies, starting with weaving. This is when a horse does side-to-side swaying of the head, neck, and forequarters. As you can see here, this horse is swaying back and forth in its stall, never changing the pattern. Stall walking is when a horse walks in a circular or pattern route, tracing the inside of the stall. Cribbing or windsucking is another common stereotypy. This is when the horse grasps an object with its teeth and makes a grunting sound. They may also inhale air at this time. Cribbing is often mistaken for wood chewing, which is when a horse strips and appears to eat wood surfaces, such as fences or feeders. Though this is not commonly classified as a stereotypy, it is a very common occurrence in horse facilities. Working to prevent stereotypies is generally more effective than trying to cure the behavior once it has developed. Caregivers can minimize the risk of stereotypic behaviors by ensuring horses have ample turnout time, plenty of opportunities to forage, and regular social interaction with other horses. For horses with stereotypies, caregivers should try to identify the underlying issue rather than physically preventing horses from performing the behavior, which can lead to further stress, frustration, and the emergence of other stereotypic behaviors. The horse may continue to perform stereotypies even after the predisposing factors have been addressed. Understand that this does not necessarily indicate their current welfare status is poor. Section 6.2 focuses on equine behavior and handling, in particular, groups of horses or single horses not on halter. With proper handling, animals experience less stress and fear, and the risk of injury to the handler and the animal is greatly reduced. Handling should utilize the animal's natural behavior, and the handler should understand and apply concepts such as field of vision, flight zone, and the point of balance. Horses evolved as prey species and have a strong fight or flight response, so all handling should be done in a calm manner. When frightened, horses will generally flee. If they feel like they cannot flee, they may become aggressive. Compared to horses, donkeys and mules are less likely to flee when frightened. Instead, they tend to study the situation before reacting. This is often incorrectly interpreted as stubbornness. Horse welfare and handler safety is improved when handlers respond promptly to signs of fear and agitation in horses. Signs that a horse is frightened or agitated include tail swishing or ringing in the absence of flies. The whites of their eyes are more visible than normal. They are sweating with minimal physical exertion. They have flared nostrils or wrinkling at the mouth or nose. Both ears are laid flat back. Pawing or striking at the ground. Running away from or charging at the handler. Vocalizations such as snorting, squealing, or calling. Their head is held very high. And kicking or turning the hindquarters towards the handler. To lessen the chances of frightening a horse, you should avoid sudden actions or noises that may startle or frighten horses, as horses have sensitive hearing. You should also provide adequate lighting to prevent the chances of horses balking at shadows or poorly lit areas. Electric cattle prods must not be used for the routine movement or handling of horses on farm or during loading and unloading. Discretion must be used in an individual extreme situation when animal or human safety is at immediate risk, but prods must never be used repeatedly or used on the face, anus, or reproductive organs of the horse. Always approach an unfamiliar horse carefully and at the shoulder, not from the rear. Generally speaking, horses are accustomed to riders or handlers approaching, mounting, and leading on the horse's left side. part of equine handling is the use of restraints, including halters and tethering. When using equipment for restraint and handling, it should be effective but cause no stress to the horse and should be designed for maximum safety of the handler and the horse. Any restraint method used to assist normal management or treatment of the horse should be the most mild and effective method available and should be applied for the minimum amount of time necessary to carry out the task. A halter and lead rope is the most common form of restraint. Generally speaking, the safest knots are those that can be quickly untied even if the horse has pulled on it. Here is an example of a slip knot being tied and released. This type of knot ensures that a horse can be quickly untied in an emergency. Horses should also never be turned loose in a pasture or stall with a halter on unless the halter has a breakaway design. For the purpose of this code, tethering means attaching a long rope or chain to the halter or leg hobble so the horse can graze. Tethering does not refer to tie stalls or briefly tying a horse to a fixed object. Tethering is a form of restraint that brings a high risk of injury to horses unless used correctly. Whenever tethering is used, it cannot cause injury and must only be used if the horse is under supervision. The person applying the tether must be knowledgeable in its use. When used by knowledgeable handlers, other acceptable forms of restraint include hobbles, twitches, lead chains, stocks, and chutes. Ensure that chutes used to restrain horses have breakout walls to assist horses that go down during handling. No matter which type of restraint you are using, corrective action must be taken if restraint devices or equipment cause injury to horses. All restraint should be properly designed and engineered to minimize noise. Use properly maintained restraint devices in the manner they were intended to be used. Now we will move on to training and learning theory. This is one of the most challenging sections of the code because there are so many different training styles and techniques. This section does not endorse or direct specific training methods. It is intended to only provide guidance. Training is an important investment in a horse, and the level of training, from basic skills to specialized work, will depend on the intended purpose of the horse. A horse intended for jumping will need different training than a horse trained for a wagon hitch. Horses well trained in ground skills, under saddle skills, or in harness skills are safer to work with and more likely to have good welfare their entire life. Poor training methods can result in behavioral problems, and horses with behavioral issues are more vulnerable to neglect, rough handling, and are more likely to face the prospect of multiple temporary owners because they are such a challenge to manage. In training, the goal should be to make the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard for the horse. It is essential that horses be given a way to respond in the way the trainer desires. Otherwise, the horse is essentially in a no-win situation. If they are not given this opportunity over time, they may show increased apathy or become dangerous and unemployable. Any tack or equipment used during training must be maintained in good repair and must fit the horse correctly. Ill-fitting equipment may cause sores, irritation, and may also cause the horse to respond to the irritation rather than the handler. The code requires that horses must not be trained in a manner that subjects them to avoidable pain or that causes them injury as a direct result of the training method used. Horses must never be subjected to training methods that are abusive or intentionally injure the animal. This includes, but is not limited to, excessive use of whips, forcing the horse's head position by tying the horse to a fixed object, or soring, which is the practice of inflicting pain on the limbs of a horse for the purpose of accentuating its gait. Horses must only undergo training that matches their physical capabilities and level of maturity. Now let's delve into learning theory and its application during training. Learning theory is used to explain how horses learn, think, and react during training, and understanding it is a critical part of effective and successful training. The following principles of learning theory can be applied to any training context. First, you should use cues or aids that are easy for the horse to understand. To avoid confusing the horse, you should only use one cue or aid at a time. Make sure that all signals are applied clearly and consistently. For example, using the leg to propel the horse forward while simultaneously pulling on the reins to slow the horse down would be confusing and contradictory. When training, shape the responses one at a time, meaning each response should be broken down into its smallest possible components and then put together in a process called shaping. During training, you should strive to minimize fear. When horses experience fear, they can come to associate everything about that environment with the fear. This can inhibit learning. Fear memories can stay with a horse their entire life. It is better to avoid fear than try to recondition the horse not to fear. You should benchmark relaxation during training sessions. Do this by observing the horse for aggressive or defensive behaviors and modify your training methods to minimize the behavior. Horses that stay relaxed during training are better able to learn and will be more cooperative and willing. Include a system of reward to the training, as it can make the task safer and easier for the horse and the trainer. A reward does not have to be a food treat. It can be something as simple as wither scratching or even the release of pressure. And finally, minimize the time between the performance of the horse's trained response and its reward. Horses do not learn well when there is a delay in reward, as they need to be able to associate the reward to the action they just performed. Further recommendations within the code include that you consult an experienced trainer or coach and attend training clinics. Be sure to exercise due diligence by researching the qualifications of trainers or coaches and ask for references. You should employ training methods that use the minimal force necessary to achieve the desired outcome, and train in short sessions, spacing training sessions over time. Horses should be trained at a minimum to lead, load into a trailer, and stand for farrier, veterinary care, and grooming. Become familiar with the correct use of all tack and training equipment, and make sure that you have an understanding of how to ensure it fits the horse correctly. If you are not sure about the fit, consult a qualified saddle or tack fitting specialist. And have a veterinarian examine the horse's mouth for any dental problems that may interfere with comfortable bitting and bridling. Possibly consult a professional trainer with respect to bitting your horse appropriately. We have now reached the end of Part 1 of Section 6. You will now advance forward to Part 2, which will cover the balance of the husbandry practices for this section.